Good afternoon, all. I am Surya from India Student Hub. We welcome all the viewers for this event, the US legal system. What should the Indian students be aware of? This is an event run by Indian students in the USA for the benefit of current and future Indian students coming here. We have noted lawyer Aparna Dave with us, and we have two Indian students, Neha and Ajaya, with us as anchors for the event. Without further delay, I invite our anchors to introduce themselves and start the event. Over to you, Ajaya.
Hey there, I'm Ajaya Karnan. I'm a student at Purdue University, West Lafayette. I specialize in aerospace engineering, and I'm currently done with my master's, graduate level, of course, and I'm doing my OPT, optional practical training, after the fact. Neha, you can take over.
Thanks, Ajaya. So, hey everyone, I am Neha Chatterjee. I am a PhD candidate in biogeochemistry at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. So also in the Midwest, same as Ajaya. And this event, essentially by India Student Hub, as Surya mentioned, is to help or mostly familiarize the current students here in the US, as well as the prospective students with the US legal system. And to help us guide through it, all of it, is Aparna Dave, a noted lawyer with us. So I'll quickly talk about the format of the event. It'll essentially be Ms. Dave talking a bit about her background and her experience practicing law to set us off with the event. And then the second half of the event will be mostly a Q&A section. So we have all of the questions that you have sent in while you have registered, as well as you are free to send in even more questions through the chat, and we will curate it instantaneously and in real time try to answer as many questions as possible with the survey. So yeah, and then just a reminder again that this event is being live broadcasted on YouTube. So go ahead and share it with your friends, colleagues, even prospectives in India, whoever might be benefiting from it. And then we'll be beginning the event. So yeah, over to you, Mr.
Hello, everybody, and welcome all the students to America. I understand that this is, coming from India to America is a huge change for, a lot of people. And as an introduction myself, I would just like all of you to know that almost 35 years ago, my husband and I, we came to the United States, and my husband was a student on an F1 PhD candidate, and I entered the US as his dependent. So I do share a lot of unknowns that you all are currently facing. And in fact, 35 years ago, US was an extremely different place. Things have changed a lot right now. India and US have become a lot closer in culture, in heritage, and there is a lot of communication between the two countries. So I thought, I am an immigration attorney. I have gotten my law degree from Boston University. This is my professional background. But the reason I am here today is to share my experiences with you and experiences of all, some of my clients who have been students and changed to different statuses, the issues they've had, how we have solved these issues and assisted them. We will talk about various different aspects and various different issues the students have and will face when they are in the United States, because they are unaware of the legal system here, they are unaware of the cultural norms here, and they are unaware of, the social etiquettes, any other questions you have. So please feel free to ask any questions you have. I am not here again as an attorney, but I am here as a community member, as part of you, walking through your experiences and how best I can share my experiences with all of you.
Thank you, Aparna. I think Ajaya, if you can take it off with beginning the Q&A.
Okay, so some of the questions that we've gotten forward, and we'll start with the most elementary. Now, as early as yesterday, I got a call telling me that my social security number was under risk. And on the surface, it's so obviously a scam, but what are some of the most common scams that can be spotted, and how exactly do we zero in on what's a scam and what's a thing? Particularly sure. With calls and messages.
Yeah, so I know this is becoming a very common scam calling, and I think you all may have noticed that scam callers have actually increased over the pandemic. It's not only you, even I get spam calls on my phones. And one thing everybody needs to remember, that the United States government does not call you for any information. So if you are getting any of these calls, please don't panic, because most of the time, I would say, in fact, all the time, institutes like Social Security, IRS, immigration, they contact candidates either by email or mail, or sometimes immigration officers could knock at your door, okay? But nobody calls you. So when you get calls like your Social Security number has been compromised, please avoid those calls. Do not give, and then they say, you know, press 1 to do this, press 2 to do that. Please don't do that. If you have any doubt, or if you get this call and if you're scared, then I would recommend make an appointment with the SSI office and go in person. Similar calls you get from IRS. I've heard from people saying that IRS, you know, somebody calls and says, hey, you know, you've not paid your taxes. You owe $30,000 to the US government. And, you know, you need to press 1 to do this, press 2 to do that. And then they will say, okay, this is the way you need to make the payment. Second, IRS also does not call you. If you owe taxes, or if there have been any tax violations, you will get a letter in the mail from the IRS. So please note, no government agencies are going to call you, and any call that is referring to you making a payment, okay, please beware of these calls, because the government is not going to call you and ask you to make payments. This is not the way the US government works. Similarly, you know, these calls sometimes keep coming. So my recommendation is, as soon as you say it's Social Security, your number has been compromised, please hang up. Do not try to, you know, press 1 and 2, where your information can be, you know, if you're on a cell phone, you know, the cell phone can be hacked. I know it's difficult to hack Apple iPhones, but still any information can go to them. So please be aware of these scam calls. And again, as I stated, that if you get these calls and if you still feel that you're afraid that, oh, I did something wrong, you can contact the government agency and ask that question, is there anything wrong? Okay, so you will always get a mail from the government agency if there is any violation.
Perfect. And I think, Aparna, you answered not only what should a person do if they're a victim of the call, but also how they should analyze if they have been a victim. I think I just add that even if you're reluctant to directly contact the government agencies, feel free to talk to your DSO or designated school official at whichever university you belong to, as well as the Indian Graduate Student Association. If that university has one, they would be one of the first steps or key persons to guide you in the correct direction. So just go ahead with that if you're unsure of what to do.
So it is just an interesting thing that I got a call on my work phone saying, you know, we've heard that you're illegal in this country, and you know, you have violated immigration law. So my answer was, oh, really? I'm an immigration lawyer. Do you want my help? The moment I said that, they hung up the phone. And since that day, I've never got a call saying that my immigration status is compromised. So this is one example that anybody gets these calls. So don't try to encourage a conversation on these calls. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, perfect. Hang up as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Or just, you know, disconnect the phone. It's no point even having a conversation. Just disconnect.
Yeah, awesome. So now that we have identified or sort of talked about how to identify scammers, let's talk a bit about something that students face while they immediately enter the US. I think mostly about signing a rent lease. So what precautions should I take or a student might take before signing a rent lease?
So basically in the US, I know a lot of people who come from India, you know, the aspect is that, you know, there's a lot of oral agreement, you know, as young people, we do not really face a lot of legal challenges in India. You know, things are taken care of by our parents or our family members. And soon as you enter the US, you know, you have to open a bank account, you have to go to the school, you have to sign these leases. So my recommendation is that whenever you are signing a lease, please make sure you read the lease carefully. You understand the terms of the lease. If you're renting a property and if it is a proper apartment complex, usually these apartment complexes do follow the state law of, you know, the rental agreements. So they are within the parameters of the state law if you're going to a proper apartment complex. If you are doing this with, you know, somebody's owning a house and, you know, you're signing a lease with somebody who's renting a room in their basement, things like that happen too. In that situation also, it's not a good idea just to have an oral agreement with these people. It's always good to have things in writing. What is your rent? What are your rights? What can you use in the property? What you cannot use in the property? So just have a clarification for yourself before entering into these kind of agreements. Secondly, I also know that there are a lot of sub agreements, where students are staying and then they're subletting this if they've gone out in the summer. Just make sure that whenever you're renting places, that the landlord allows sublet, because sometimes something can happen while you're staying in that apartment in the summer, but the lease is not in your name. It is in the name of the student who's actually renting, and the student is maybe not in the country. And if something were to happen, and if you're occupying that premise without the landlord knowing, that can be a huge issue. And you could have liabilities if something happens in that apartment, or you've done something which creates a problem. So just be aware of all these things. Even if you're subleasing from your student, you make sure you talk to the student. The students sometimes are required to inform the rental, the apartment rental places that, there is an additional person who's going to be staying with me. So all these things are formalized and done formally. So just make sure that don't talk to people and somebody says, oh, you know what, this apartment is for $600, but you can rent it from me for $250. Just keep in mind that deals which are really nice and fascinating sometimes are too good to be true. So don't get into this, because you're coming in sometimes to the US with limited funds and you're always looking for good deals. But just beware that don't just, get into these good deals without thinking through and having proper agreements and doing some background check. And as Neha very well pointed out, that international student office is available in all these big universities. If you have any doubts, there are students associations, Indian student associations, which all big universities have. The DSO at the international office is always there to help you. Please talk to somebody. Don't try to feel, oh, I can do this on my own. I really don't need anybody. People in the US, one thing I can tell you, go to reliable people. They're always there to help you. Even if you have questions, don't hesitate to even talk to your professor or talk to your thesis advisor or your guide or your mentor. These are resources that are available in every university. Feel free to use your resources and connect to the right person. That is my recommendation and advice.
Thank you. That was very helpful. And it's certainly pertinent advice going forward. But assuming things have already gotten really bad and I'm stuck in a lease, or worse, I'm aware that I've been defrauded in a really severe manner. And after getting the advice that you've asked us to take, they suggest pursuing legal action. How do I go about that? And if I choose to do so, would that be financially viable for somebody like me who is, let's say, not so financially able
I
to
agree.
be
I
spending
understand.
in court?
Right.
Yeah.
So basically, once again, if you think that there has been a defraud or somebody has taken you for a ride, if to say that, then my recommendation is, again, talk to somebody who's there at the university, somebody who you can trust, and somebody who will give you the right advice. If you do need to take legal action, people who are living in the community for years, they sometimes do know, attorneys who are there to help out. There are also some agencies, government agencies, which assist people who are of low income or who are not making much money. So you can also approach these agencies. But sometimes my recommendation is all student communities have a lot of people who are around. Like, for example, if you're in the DC area, there are people like me who are not only attorneys, but they're also member of the communities. We know other people in the area. I may not be doing, rental agreements. I may not be practicing tax law. I may not be doing those things, but I do know other people who are doing these kind of, and providing these kind of services. So my recommendation is, don't just jump this on your own. Talk to some people who you trust. Talk to people who are around you, who are older and have lived in this country for a few years. Get advice, and then connect to the right attorney or to the right pro bono agencies where they are taking up cases for students and other people who are of limited means. So all I want to say is, don't feel you're alone. don't get scared or afraid. You know, when you talk to people and you share your ideas with people who you trust, you will definitely find a way how to resolve your problems. So don't try to sink deeper into a hole by trying to do things on your own. When required, try to please seek legal advice and advice from professionals.
That's wonderful advice. There's something else along with in the same vein of these renting agreements and dealing with landlords. I've often heard that people, while they're leaving apartments, they have been stuck with a bad landlord for a while, and when they leave the apartment, they tend to get these unjustified bills for cleaning, and which might not be necessarily on them completely. They might not even be at fault, but they don't know of a way of how to get out of that. Do you know any of who they can go to in situations like these?
So let me tell you this, that, to be careful about everything. For example, when you even go and rent a car in this country, right? Before you rent a car, it's a good idea to look at the car, see if there are any problems in the car. The car could have a ding, the car could have a scratch, which, sometimes you don't notice. But what you do is, even before you rent an apartment or you sign the lease, you need to walk through the apartment. Or if you're renting a car, for example, you need to look at that car, take pictures. There could be a microwave there which is already broken. Did you bring that up when when the lease was signed? Did you let the landlord know in writing that the microwave is broken, the refrigerator doesn't work properly, the drainage system is not proper, the carpet has torn, there are holes in the wall? So before you rent an apartment and before you sign that lease, if you see there are problems, make sure you put all that in writing, that when I entered this apartment, these were the issues that were already existing, and the landlord needs to repair all those things, right? To make your place livable. Similarly, you keep a tab of everything. If anything is breaking down in the apartment, students have this attitude, oh, I don't have time. Please don't do that. If you think a sink is breaking or leaking, or your bathroom has a problem, as soon as you see the problem, you need to report it in writing. Okay, do not make a phone call. Just write an email. These days, everybody uses emails. Get the email of your landlord, whether it's a rental building or it is a personal landlord. Put everything in writing, that, this is not working. Can you please come and fix it? If it is not fixed properly, then again, have an email chain that follows that. Similarly, when you leave an apartment, you basically if you're getting the apartment cleaned, or if you're cleaning the apartment, take pictures of everything. Email the landlord saying that, I'm ready to leave the apartment. Everything is done. Do you want to come in and walk through with me to make sure everything is okay? Don't just dump the apartment, leave the keys, and just walk out. So sometimes these are the things that you can do, where you can get involved with the landlord, have them come and see the apartment before you vacate it. If they may say that, okay, there is a hole here, I would like you to fix it. Maybe if you fix it yourself, that might be a lot cheaper than having somebody else. The landlord is just going to charge you the professional fees. Or even carpet. If you have ruined the carpet, okay, which can happen, the landlord is going to charge you the professional fees for cleaning that carpet. But if you think you've ruined something, you take action and clean it up, and then have a meeting with the landlord and walk through the apartment to make sure everything is fine, and have everything in writing, and have all follow-ups through email. So if anything happens, the landlord might say, this faucet broke. But if you have an email 2 months ago that, this faucet was broken, and I did tell you that there was a problem with this faucet and you never fixed it. If you do not have that in writing, then what is going to happen? Your rent is going to end, and then they may say, hey, the faucet was broken, you're responsible, you please pay for it.
Yeah, I'm in fact going on a rather weird tangent. You spoke about, you used an analogy to a car. And one of the things that people do alongside getting leases is to get their own form of private transport while in the States, a car. And one of the most common things that they're going to deal with is parking offenses and speeding offenses, because not everybody's too sure of the road laws over here. And one of my friends, he was going like 90 miles an hour in a 70-mile-an-hour zone, and he racked up a fine up to a couple of $100, and he just paid it in full. But after the fact, his friends told him, you should have probably pled it down in court. Now, assuming most of us don't have like a formal legal attorney on record, do you think it's more advisable to pay it up front, take no risks, or should we go for legal assistance? Should it be pled down to a lower charge in courts?
So basically, it would depend upon a situation, right? You have to go on a case-by-case basis. For example, there could be a situation that you have parked, you're living in a big city and you've parked the car in a place you're not supposed to park the car. Or you've not been able to understand the sign that is, sometimes in big cities, they have these weird signs, like you can park from 7 to 9 on Monday through Friday, but you cannot do it at this. Sometimes these signs are very difficult to understand. The parking signs, if you are in a big city. Just make sure you read all the signs before you park the car. If you're not sure what the sign says, maybe ask a couple of people who are living in that area, what does the sign say? And say you did park the car and you got a ticket there for $80 or whatever it is. But if you really feel that you parked the car correctly, sometimes these people who are parking attendants walking around, sometimes you may have followed everything, but they may still give you a ticket. And if you feel that, hey, you know what, I've been wronged by this ticket and I did not understand this sign, you can always say that you're going to appeal. It is not that, oh, you have to be so afraid of it. You will get a court date for that. You can take proof of everything that you have to say, I parked properly. This is what the sign said. I understood the sign this way. And you can always go to court. You can always have a day in court here. Similarly, when you're driving, there could be a situation, even if you're driving on the road, sometimes there's speed limits. The speed is 50 and all of a sudden it goes to 45, or all of a sudden it goes to 30. And you have not noticed, on the same road, the speed may change a few times. And sometimes you may be driving only 5 miles above the speed limit or 10 miles above the speed limit. And if you feel that, you've not been able to see this speed limit and, you feel that you're right and, whatever happened was unfortunate. So whenever you feel that something has happened, you feel you're not clearly at fault, it's not a bad idea to appeal it, okay? And at least, but I would definitely appeal if your history is clean, if there are points on your driver's license. So sometimes, paying a fine could be $35, $40. You may want to pay the fine if you don't have time to go to court, because sometimes these hearings could take time, you don't have time to take off, then okay, pay it off. But whenever there are points on your driver's license, remember that is going to affect you because your insurance is going to go up. So it's not only going to be the $200 fine, but you may have 2 or 3 points, which your insurance agency is going to know, and then they're going to hike up your insurance. So whenever you are even driving, if there are points on your insurance, it's not a bad idea to even appeal that case, go to court. You can always plead to the judge that, I drove fast, I do understand, this is what happened, I missed seeing the speed limit, I'm very sorry. This is my first offense. I've just come to the United States. I just got my driver's license. I'm trying to learn the law. I'll be careful next time. Please, forgive me for my points in the driver's license. And if you have a clean record, so what you can do is if you've been driving for a couple of years, the insurance company will have your record, or you can obtain a record from DMV saying that you have a very clean record. You can show that to the judge. And then, they may feel, hey, you know what? He made this mistake, it happened once. Okay, you pay the fine, but we will not put points on your driver's license. So, it's always a good idea to assess the situation, see where you think if you've totally broken the law, that's a total different thing. But if you think that, there are ways in which you can explain, you have a strong case, you can always appeal. It's not a problem. One thing I want to let all students know who are listening, in this country, please do not drive when you are under the influence of an alcohol. Because if you are driving under the influence of alcohol, and if you are stopped, that could be an issue. Drunk driving is not acceptable here. Trivial traffic offenses, which are less than a few $100s, where you've just speeded, or if you have parked in the wrong place, all those things people understand. These things can happen. But if you are having, alcohol in your car, and if you are driving under the influence of alcohol, that is a problem. So I just want people to understand and know that if you think you do not have the ability to drive because you are drunk, please Uber yourself or ask your friend to drive. Because these, if your alcohol is above a certain limit, then it is an issue and that will go in your record. So just be careful about driving while under the influence of an alcohol.
Oh, this sounds amazing. Actually, very sound advice. So moving on to something a little bit more drastic that can happen to a student. What if they absolutely lose their passport, which has their visa? So what recourses do they have in such a
So I would
situation?
recommend that every time, whenever you come, just make sure you keep a copy of your passport. Okay, make a copy of your biographic page of your passport, your US visa. Make sure you have copies of everything with you. Yes, you may lose your passport. You find out, has somebody stole the passport? If that is the situation, you can always do a police report. Okay, that you have a bag with you. You went to the mall, or you went to the airport, or you went to any public place, and that bag is gone. Then you can always have a police report that, somebody stolen my passport. And if you have a copy of the passport, that is going to be very helpful, because then that person can approach the Indian embassy. The embassy is always there to go through your record and issue you a new passport. Okay. Now, the problem is this, that the visa, all students still have a valid I-94 when they enter the country. So I-94 is a document that allows you to live in the country. Okay. But visa is a document that allows you to enter the country. So this is immigration, but I just want people to be aware that when you get your student visa stamped in India, you use that visa to enter the country. Okay. Once you are in the US at the port of entry, they allow you to enter, and then they issue you an I-94. Now, in the current situation, I-94s are not given to you by the officer who allows you to enter the country. You need to then go online, put in your name, your passport number, and then you will get a paper I-94, which you need to print and keep it with you. Because I-94 is a document which will state that you're already in the country and you can stay in the country on an F-1B as a duration of status, which means that as far as you are a valid, you are on a valid student visa, I would say, let me correct myself, you're on a valid student status, that is a full-time student at a university, you are allowed to live in the country. So that I-94 is the duration of status. So say you have that I-94, you lose your passport, you can get a new passport from the Indian embassy, but whenever you need to leave the country, you will have to go and get your passport re-stamped to re-enter the country. But your stay in the US does not just become illegal because you've lost your visa. It is the I-94 that keeps you in the country. Now, if you've lost your passport, the US embassy issues you a new passport, please contact your U.S.A. Go to the international office, talk to the international office, telling them that this is what has happened. My passport was lost. I have reported, that my passport is lost. Indian embassy is going to issue me a new passport. Let me know if anything that needs to be done by me, and check with the international office, what do they have to say. So my recommendation for all students is that if any time you feel that there is going to be any violation of your status or you've lost some document, please contact the international office and inform them what has happened, because every student has a service number which is attached to their identity. And for any reason that service number is defunct, you are in trouble and you're out of status. So anything that happens which you think is important, you need to talk to the international office, especially when you're losing your official documents. And there is nothing to panic. As I said, you can get a new passport. When you leave the country, you can get a new visa, but please talk to your international office about whatever is happening so that they are.
Thank you very much. That's extremely illuminating. Now, speaking of keeping status, which you mentioned, something regarding the intricacies of that, we've gotten a question from Raman Singh. Now, I know that you can get practical training for a field that is specifically related to your field of study. However, let's say this is the summer and I want to get employed at the university in a capacity that's not strictly academic. Now, what will be the limitations for students under an F1 visa to be employed in such a capacity?
Okay. So once again, similarly, students are allowed to work on campus. So you come from India, and if you want campus employment, once again, contact your international office, talk to the designated official who is in your international office, who deals with student employment. And as a F1 student, you can work on campus 20 hours a week, okay? You could be working in the campus cafeteria, you could be working in the library, you could do all of that, but the limitation is 20 hours a week. And again, you need to go through the university to do this, okay? So this is on-campus employment, which you are allowed to do because the school is aware of it and you are employed by that. Now, the other question is this, that there could be a situation where students want off-campus employment while they are on the student status. OPT is a separate issue, okay? Now, off-campus employment is only allowed after 12 months of you being in the United States, okay? And in that off-campus employment, you do need to show that there is a financial issue and you need to be able to support yourself because of your financial problems. And again, for this, you do need to talk to the international office. You do need to talk to them and tell them, this is the situation, you need off-campus employment because you have financial issues, and they can guide you. But to do off-campus employment, you do need to apply to get an employment authorization card. You cannot just, if you're on campus, you can work on campus on your F1 visa, and that is allowed. But the moment you do off-campus employment, you are required to get an employment authorization card to work off campus, which is not in your field, and there are limitations on how many hours you can work. So please make sure when any of these things happen, speak to your international office. Do not just say, oh, my friend told me this, it's no big deal, I can go and work. And you know what? You work at a McDonald's outside and you are a student full-time and you get that paycheck from McDonald's that is going to reflect on your taxes for the lifetime that you're going to be here. And that is going to be counted as unauthorized employment. And unauthorized employment can be a violation and will be a violation of your student status. So just be careful, talk to the student advisor. Don't just listen to your fellow students who tell you, oh, you know what, I can work, it's no problem. Those students can have a green card. Those students could be citizens. They are different from the F1 students who are coming here. Their rights are different, their employment ability is different. So please talk to your advisor before you take any form of employment. And the universities are aware of this and they will give you proper advice.
Duly noted. Thank you. So in the same vein of incomes, paychecks, let's talk about taxes a bit. So what kind of financial documents or tax documents does a student have to file at the end of a financial year? And to the same question, if a student doesn't have any income during that year, are they still allowed, still supposed to file a tax document? And what if they don't?
Okay. Yeah. So now, once again, as I said that, by limitation, I'm not an expert in tax. Whatever I say about tax is just going to be from knowledge. This is not legal advice or any of that. If you're not sure about so basically, if you earned any income in the United States, you are required to file taxes. Okay. So my recommendation is this, that if you do get a W-2, or if you're getting paychecks from the university or from wherever, if you're authorized to work and you're getting these paychecks, if you're not sure what to do, please consult a tax advisor. There are tax advisors available. There is H&R Block, where they give advice to students. Or if you're not sure, you can, talk to your, any person at the university who you can trust, who can, talk to an accountant. So any earned income in the United States is taxable and you are supposed to file taxes. It's different that you may get the money back because your income is not enough. All those things come secondary, but any earned income, you should be filing taxes. Sometimes even scholarships that you are getting could be subject to taxes because sometimes you do get something from the university saying you've been paid so much money. So whenever you get any of these things that shows that you've been paid so much money from any sources in the United States, it could be considered as income. So whenever you get any of this, please don't think that, oh, I'm a student, I don't need to file. You should, you are required to file taxes and get advice from a proper tax consultant. If, he tells you you're not required to file tax, then that's up to them. But as I said, you get a W-2, you get anything from the university, anything to show that you've been paid, including scholarship money. Please take advice of people. And if you're required to file taxes, please file tax.
Thank you. And to add to that, about how scholarships, fellowships, they're all taxed, and sometimes they might be taxed a little bit differently than assistantships, which a lot of the grad students are hired on. Another thing to keep in note is a lot of us go to these conferences and we get travel grants or awards when we present and win. Sometimes some of these awards can also be taxed. I learned that the hard way. So just make sure to be aware of all of this. And then just a bit of advice that usually when students join in, the HR personnel of your department who is hiring you might give introductory workshop on tax advisory for international students. I attended that and I found that to be very helpful. So just find out if your university does that too.
Yeah, that's a good thing, Neha, because, all universities do have a lot of resources. So, what I would just like to tell all the students is, please utilize all the resources. America is a country where you will get an answer to all your questions, especially if you are in a university. There are people who are there to help you. So please don't shut yourself down. Go to the right people and get the right advice and recommendation.
Well, thank you. That's great advice and something that we should all be keeping in mind. You spoke about paychecks and getting paid, and to move to something that's not as structurally well defined. Suppose at near the end of my academic course abroad, I intend to start a startup, or a friend or a colleague asks me to invest in theirs. Under my F1 visa, can I found a startup? Can I become a shareholder in their project? What's the legality concerning these things?
So in this, I will refrain to answer this question because this question is very broad. And my recommendation is this, that before you start, doing startups and, getting into all of this, please get advice from a proper immigration lawyer. The reason simply being is that depends upon the corporate structure, depends upon what you are doing for that company, what are the responsibilities, what are you going to be getting from this company? Are you going to be getting a 1099, W-2? What is the entire structure? So my recommendation is that before you commit yourself to getting into any business, okay, you need to talk to somebody, because you always need to remember, you got an F1 visa to come and study in the United States. And then you get an optional practical training to be able to train yourself in that field. So don't just assume that, oh, because you are here, you can start your company and you can do this and you can do that. There are a lot of restrictions that apply to all kinds of visas. So before you try to get into any of this, even as lucrative it sounds, please contact an immigration attorney and get their recommendation and advice before you start investing or even get onto a board or do anything with a business.
That is wonderful advice. Moving on to something a little bit more different. So if a person is working in a field that falls under ITAR, which is International Traffic in Arms Regulations, what restrictions is a student subject subject to office security clearances and employment or training, which can come further down the line?
So basically, as you know, that, when you're working in an employment, which is, within the security, most of these projects, which are the ITER projects, are given to US citizens and permanent residents who are eligible for security clearance. So if a student is even considering working on that, it's the employer's responsibility to inform them and, go through this security process. So I don't even know if a student will be hired to work on this project, depending upon the sensitivity of the data and the sensitivity that is appearing. So, for most of these projects, as far as my knowledge serves, are US citizens and green card holders who are hired for these particular projects. But if you are hired for any of these particular projects, which can have two portions, sensitive information and then not that sensitive information that goes into the project, which, could not be security, which does not require high security, then it is basically the person who's hiring you needs to be aware of all of this. It's not the student who can just go through them saying, go to immigration or places saying that, oh, you know what, I need this clearance. So it's the employer who you are going to be working with who needs to be aware of what needs to be done. and what security clearances that need to be that they need to get. So it's not, so the students need to be aware that if you are in any of such employment, the employer will be involved in getting whatever needs to be done.
Okay, now that's very sound advice, and it's particularly pertinent to me. In aerospace engineering, you get to realize what a minefield it is with
Correct.
regards to internships and even volunteer work. And speaking of volunteer work or internships, as a matter of fact, you'll notice that particularly in fields where ITAR is very restrictive, some of the more readily available opportunities tend to be unpaid or as volunteer work. Now, which of these exactly are admissible under DOL rules, or just to make sure as an internship that they don't violate any wage requirements under FLSA or Fair Labor Standards Act? Or more to the point, as you were saying earlier, off-campus employment would require employment authorization. Does that apply to unpaid internships as well?
So basically, for unpaid internship, it may not be applied if it is a part of your curriculum. So for example, there are a lot of CPT programs, right? There are a lot of universities that have curriculum training where you work for some time and then you go to school for some time. So in those kind of programs, the university themselves have created this whole program in which you could be working and then go to internships, and all of you're doing all of those things under the umbrella of the university when you're in a CPT program. So the university basically knows what they are doing, and they are following up with. So if you're under a CPT program, then in certain type of CPT programs, you may not need an employment authorization because it is part of your curriculum. So the university takes care of all of that aspect, okay? But then if you are just volunteering your work, or if you're getting a training, say, for example, you're right now at Purdue and there is some other company there which is doing similar work, and you just want to go there as a trainee, you're not going to get any money from them, but you're just going as a trainee, then a lot of times it's the employer who makes that call, because the employer needs to have a system in which they are allowing student volunteers to come in and work. Okay, they have a system, because even if you're volunteering, the employer is responsible for certain things. Like if something happens to you, you may be a volunteer, but you may not be paid. But there are other things that, you're on their premise. And if something were to happen on that premise, they are still responsible. So my recommendation is that even before you accept any voluntary employment which is related to your work, you're working in a lab or you're working at an institution, please check with your international office. So if somebody tells you, I have this lab, just come in and work for me, check with your international office. I'm getting this offer to work, part-time, but I'm not going to be paid for it. Do you think it is okay? Do you think it's going to violate any of my student status? Can you give me a clarification? If you're not even clear with them, talk to an immigration attorney. So what I'm trying to say is, with the type of employment, what you are trying to do, what sort of an internship it is, if you are not clear yourself, reach out to the international office. If they are not clear, then talk to an immigration attorney.
Wonderful advice. I actually have a question of my own regarding this. So nowadays there are firms which also offer externships, which might be just shorter variations of internships. They are usually unpaid, but they can be paid. It's done by consulting firms a lot of times, wherein students go through a competitive process to get selected, but then usually international students choose to not get paid. But the local students, the domestic students might get the payment for the while that they are doing the externship with the firm. So this is a bit of a gray area because it's just so new. So do you suggest the same thing, to talk to the DSO or the national office?
Absolutely,
again?
Absolutely. Because, you don't want to be excited and get paid by that. When you're, actually, if you're a PhD student, I assume this university is already paying, and you're funded by the university. And, as an F1, you may not be allowed to just work anywhere and everywhere unless your program requires that, as a student. So my strong recommendation to you is that whenever you are accepting such jobs or applying for such jobs, before you even get into this arena, talk to the DSO and talk to the international office. Ask them, are you even allowed to do that? Or you may be working for a professor and doing research in your university, working on some topics which could be in conflict with what you are trying to do with some other companies. We don't know that, I mean, research is such a broad area. You could be doing research on something and you are now working somewhere else, which is, in conflict with what you're doing with your mentor or your, advisor. So just make sure that you get all these things cleared with your international office before just accepting these offers and just going on doing whatever you think you want to do.
Great advice. I'll sort of now take a question from one of our attendees here, Vikas Mishra. He asked, can students invest in the stock market? Essentially, can they be involved in day trading?
That is different because that is a different situation. Investing in a stock market is, you're just investing some money in a stock market and, you're not personally working there or employed there, stuff like that. So I don't assume all that should be an issue. But once again, as I said, that I refrain from giving legal advice over this conversation because this is more of a general information. Anytime you're trying to do something which is not the norm, please talk to an immigration lawyer.
This has been an excellent talk so far, and we've gone over the specifics of having a clean record, not getting points on driver's licenses, making sure that we go over documents, preferably with an immigration attorney, making sure to consult the DSO at the university. Now, let's assume that a student has already gotten a few offenses on their record. How would they go about expunging that, if possible?
Again, it depends upon what type of records they are. Okay, so once again, my answer to your question is that it's been a repeated, if it's repeated violations, repeated speeding tickets, if you want to expunge, it all depends upon what records they are, what has been involved. And even if you want to do any of this, then you need to talk to a traffic attorney or attorney who represents people in traffic violations. So you do need to speak to an expert in order to be able to expunge. But my recommendation is this, that guys, be careful. You're in a new country, you are in a new environment. Just be aware, of your driving limits, your driving speed. As I said, driving under the influence, trying to, break laws. Don't do that. This country basically believes a lot in the legal system, and the legal system here is extremely strong. Rules and regulations are followed very closely. So, my advice to all my fellow Indian citizens are, respect the laws of this country, live within the boundaries of the law of this country. If you are not sure of something, go and seek advice, talk to the people who are experienced. You need help, go to the tax consultant, go to an immigration lawyer, go to a traffic attorney, try to understand your rights. Okay, try to understand what your liabilities are, what your rights are. But don't just assume that things work in this country the way it works in India. My friend said this, I've heard that a lot of times. Oh, my friend did this and, that's why I did it. Nothing happened to him. So, this whole idea that, okay, nothing happened to him, so nothing is going to happen to me. Please, get rid of this mentality, that, oh, I'll do this and I'll get by. I'll give you one example. Sometimes I think this does not come up in our discussion, but I've got calls for shoplifting, okay, which people have not brought up in this forum, but I've got calls from people where people have put stuff in their cart and they've just walked out, and they've been charged with shoplifting because they've taken this cart outside the store. And then is like, oh, what am I supposed to do? I mean, don't be so naive, don't, there are cameras everywhere. Please be aware of what you're doing. And please do not try to do anything which violates the law in this country. Please live within the realms of law and seek advice before doing anything which is out of the norm. So just be careful, just beware of the laws and follow the laws. It's not that difficult.
Thank you so much, Aparna. That was very, very comprehensive. And I can certainly say that I've been more educated than I was at the start of this conversation. I believe we've gotten through the questions that have been given to us. And yeah, I'd like to thank you on behalf of India Student Hub again. I'd like to thank Neha as well, who's been an excellent co-host. She's given plenty of insight on her own. And just so everybody knows, this event was recorded. If there was a detail that you failed to catch on to it, it will be posted on to issuebus.com in a few days. And you can stay tuned for more updates, more events there. And I think that will be all from me. Ms. Dave, if you have something to clarify on top of that, feel free. But otherwise, this was a great talk. It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, same here. And as I said, I will repeat myself, US has given you all an opportunity, make good use of the opportunity, follow the laws of the country, respect the laws of the country. And if you're not sure of your acts, please get proper advice and, do not listen to hearsay and other people. There are experts available. Please seek proper advice and try to follow the law and respect the law. That's all I have to say.
Okay, that seems very, very comprehensive. And as I said, the event will be posted on issuebus.com. If you have any specific queries that you couldn't get through in chat, you could email indiastudenthub@gmail.com. Could go onto their website, and I'm sure that somebody will be able to provide the assistance required. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you.